This is Echo 3, and let's discuss SpaceX and their current Starship project. I've built a full-scale, mostly working replica of Starship without using mods. This craft stands just over 121 meters tall and has a diameter of 9 meters. The booster section is 71 meters long and the upper stage is 50 meters. The skin of the craft is just a fairing that I shaped as best I could. The game doesn't have an engine similar to the Raptor engine used by SpaceX, so this craft is using vector engines for atmospheric flight and Wolfhounds for the vacuum engines. There are 29 vector engines on the bottom of the booster stage. That's about the same number that SpaceX is planning on using. The final number is not currently decided, but 29 gave this craft a starting thrust-to-weight ratio of just over 1.1 on the pad. You can check out my symmetry video for how I did that ring of 18 engines. Inside the booster, I used the largest 5-meter diameter tanks from the Making History DLC. There are 6 fully fueled tanks and 2 empty tanks stacked 4 high. I did put a type of stock grid fin on the booster, but I haven't tested it yet. They are designed to work similarly to Falcon 9's grid fins and less like the air brakes in the stock game. The Starship has 3 vector engines and 3 Wolfhound engines. Unfortunately, the game was a little confused by this setup and didn't give a proper readout for timing maneuvers. Also on the underside of the ship is a docking port so the craft can be refueled in space. This craft, however, will not need refueling as it is overbuilt for the Kerbin system. Inside the ship are 3 of the largest 3.5 meter fuel tanks. That still leaves the top half of the ship empty as cargo space. After reaching orbit, the upper section has so much fuel left that we cannot safely land. Let's take this Starship on a little journey by the Mun. Hopefully, soon we will be seeing real ones flying people and supplies to and from the Moon. This craft probably has enough Delta V to land on Ike and return and land on Kerbin. More testing is needed on my craft to get it working well and to see what all it is capable of doing. A small maneuver on the far side of the Mun will put this craft on an aerobraking pass of Kerbin before coming back around to land. I do not know if this craft is able to land on its first aerobraking pass, but for this recording I did one pass and then came back around to land. In earlier attempts I did use more passes, but the timing of the current method worked well to get the craft close to the Kerbal Space Center. I do have a tutorial on using aerobraking if you'd like to see more about that. This craft, however, is designed differently. I used a couple of the Cal 1000s to control the movement of the fins. I even bound an action group to keep the fins locked in position during launch. Since SAS cannot be used to control the robotic hinges, I have to be vigilant to keep the craft stable. I have the pitch controls bound to the flat movements, however, it seems that there is a small window for keeping the craft stable. It was a rather tedious task to keep the craft stable in flight. Landing was very difficult, and this recording was not my best belly flop maneuver. It was my best landing attempt, though. I think the craft needs some slightly larger fins on the bottom for better control. It could also use some form of RCS thrusters. Probably the Werner engines would work best, as that is similar to what SpaceX is planning on using. SpaceX intends to use hot gas RCS thrusters, but so far has only used nitrogen cold gas thrusters. 8 pistons are used for landing struts. This does not provide a very wide base. Therefore, the craft needs to land on level ground near one of the launch sites. In all my attempts, this was the closest I got to the Kerbal Space Center. So, this was my most successful landing attempt and resulted in the craft falling over. The less successful test flights resulted in a rapid, unscheduled disassembly of the craft. I'm Echo 3, and thanks for joining me for this Starship test flight. I'll see you next time.